You know the worst part about a service business? It's a service business. You have to do a service to get paid for it, as opposed to a product company where you build it, everybody comes, pays for it, uses it. People that built it, who knows where they are? They're on a yacht, they're sleeping. Wouldn't it be nice if your service business was a little more like a product company? Well, this, the last of an 8-week series I did on cloud tech, is what that's all about. If you haven't seen the previous weeks, probably want to go watch those first. We're putting all of that together into how to build a fully automated service offering for your clients with data you already have that you could start doing for your current clients tomorrow. Believe it or not, you can get continuing education credits for this. Check out the video description below for how to do that. Let's go build a fully automated service offering. What are we talking about this week? How about how to build a fully automated service? Simple as that, right? Quick and easy, spin up a fully automated service. We all retire and make a bunch of money without working. That's the plan. An hour from now, that'll be our collective trajectory. So the agenda, this is less about the nuts and bolts, although I'll show you a bit of the nuts and bolts. It's pretty, because the nuts and bolts are pretty simple, and more about how do you approach like rolling out a service like this for your clients. So we're going to talk about what we're selling, how to build a sales funnel for it, client onboarding, and then ongoing kind of support, because you don't want to create this thing that's a monster to maintain. Otherwise, that's really not fully automated. Okay, after that, we're going to talk what's next for Realize. Are we all going to go our separate ways, never talk to each other again? And say, remember that time we did that 8-week series? Remember Logan? Remember Katie? The friendships we made? Whatever happened to those people? Are we going to do more stuff? And then Thursday, reminder, we're going to do a community event on Twitter that is like throwing it out there. What are the gnarliest bits of your business or your client's business to automate? Now you guys have a tool belt that is laden with cool technology now. You're going to have some new automation ideas. And so this is an opportunity to throw some stuff on a wall and say, how do we automate through this issue and that issue? First and foremost, what are we selling? Big surprise, this scorecard. You've seen this guy before. So first off, why is this significant? Like, why should we be looking at stuff like this? You guys have probably heard me harp on this before, but all of the issues with our profession, from access to expertise, to being able to find the right team, to that always on mentality where you always have to be checking your email, all that stuff. It's because we're service businesses. And what's made the economy explode in the last 20 years, I would argue, hasn't been service businesses. It's been product companies that are driven by the internet, SaaS, Amazon, stuff like that. So the ability for product companies to scale at a kind of crazy level. Service companies really aren't privy to that same level of scale. You can leverage the internet and it will help you, but you can't scale what you're doing from 1 to 1 million tomorrow. So when we talk about the bottlenecks with our firms, many of those bottlenecks are simply dictated by the fact that we're a service company. And there's only so much you can ever do as a service company to overcome those. So historically, building products has been reserved for big companies. They've got the money, they've got the developers, they can invest in building these products. But what I see as the most compelling reason to come to grips with the fact that anybody can build software, and right now it's pretty easy, but it's going to keep going in that direction. So 5 years from now, it's going to be even easier for people to build their own stuff, wire together their own integrations, that sort of thing. I think the most compelling reason to get involved in this is because the scale that's available to product companies is now accessible to people like you and I. So rather than living in a world where we're 100% service-based, why not 80-20? Pull in a little bit of product revenue to what you do. If you could grow your revenue by 20% and not have to service that revenue, that's pretty great. So I think the future is more of these kind of hybrid product and service companies. Now, I think you guys who already have the trusted relationships with your clients, you are the ones to benefit from this, because product companies don't have trust. You have trust. You have an intimate understanding of what your client needs. And so who better than you to introduce products that are going to be valuable to your clients? So that's a crux of why I think this is significant and why
rather than being afraid of somebody else productizing us out of business, I actually think we're in a sweet spot to be able to lean into productization, build a more profitable business than we ever have before, while actually giving even more value to our clients than we ever could in an interpersonal way. So, scorecarding. This could be anything, but scorecarding is like, to me, a simple, tangible thing that anybody could build and roll out. So that's why we're focused just on scorecarding. So reminder, anatomy of a scorecard, why I like this, the simplicity of it. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 data points basically. And 4 of these data points generally are going to be fixed. So header 1, after setup, that's just going to be set. You're not going to have to provide that every single time. Same with header 2 and header 3. Same with the thresholds that are defined for star ratings. So you're going to set that stuff up once and you're going to forget it. The only things that then get submitted on an ongoing basis are who it is, what's the date, and even that you may not need to be submitted if you always want to use the current day, and then the 3 results. So you guys know enough about web forms to know that collecting data like that is a pretty simple process. In the grand scheme of things, it's not hard to build these. So you've got this thing, you've got your existing client relationships. Where do you start when it comes to, I'm going to start rolling something like this out? I think it's always wise to start with kind of a beta run of clients. And so that's actually the stage that I'm at now. Grab a few of those clients that you enjoy working with, that are going to be understanding if there's any speed bumps along the way, but are also ones that are great use cases. And so the great use cases, I think, for scorecarding are those one-off pain points you hear about. Most of the time when clients reach out to me, it's because there's some sort of recurring thing they don't have a solution for. Usually those are great opportunities for an ongoing scorecarding solution, especially if those pain points stem from other people. So I can't get my employees to do this or that. That's a great opportunity to say, let's define your expectation of your employees, and then let's hold them to those expectations on a daily basis. Pick 3 things that you want them to do that are kind of over the top metrics that will pull them in the direction that will lead to success for your business. They'll work hard at that, and they're going to get that every single day and then be held accountable for it. KPIs, talked about this a bit. So usually advising is built around a set of KPIs. That could be monthly, it could be quarterly. But if you've got 10 or 15 KPIs that are driving your business, especially if you have employees, usually upstream from each of those KPIs, there could be a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of inputs that feed into that KPI. And then you sit down with the business owner, and in a way, it's like you hold them accountable for these KPIs when really there were loads of inputs that led to this result. That's your responsibility as the business owner. You take ownership of all that stuff, but the result is so many degrees of separation from the business owner's control that the best place for accountability is upstream from that. What are your employees doing that it's leading to success or failure of those KPIs? Oftentimes, if you have a set of KPIs with a business owner already, all you got to do is look upstream from those. What are the things that are feeding into those KPIs? And those are great scorecarding opportunities. Third thing here, milestones. Oftentimes we talk with our clients, especially if they're the annual tax client type, where maybe you only talk to them once or twice a year, and they talk about big picture things. For whatever reason, that conversation with their CPA is an opportunity to talk about where are we trying to get to? And oftentimes those are bigger milestones that are more out there. How do you chunk down those milestones to be shorter, more measurable goals to ensure that you get to where you're trying to go? Scorecarding is a great solution there. So if you're talking with that client and they're talking about, yeah, we really want to get to 6 delivery trucks by the end of the year, something like that, dig into that. Say, great, what do we have to do to get there? Maybe it's company level reporting by week or something. And you set that trajectory for here's where we have to go to get to 6 delivery trucks by the end of the year. We're going to run a scorecard every single week. Those are good opportunities to dig into scorecarding. So if you decide that this is something for you, How do you put out there that this is something that you're doing? So my plan is a client-wide kind of announcement of here's this thing that we do. And I'm sure that'll get a small subset of people, but not a huge number, because people are going to respond best usually when you're offering the solution to a problem that they have. I think people have a hard time connecting the solutions with the problem oftentimes. Second, I've always had really good success with webinars. So you frame this webinar as how to set up the right kind of KPI, or kind of setting and meeting objectives for your business, something like that. Whether it's scorecarding you provide or scorecarding that they do, it's a part of the solution. Because in order to get to those kind of big picture goals, upstream from that, you've got to be measuring all of the inputs. So you stress the importance of that. And then obviously you've got a call to action at the end to say that we can help you with this in an automated way. Lastly, listen. That's a hearing aid. So the biggest thing is just simply listen for those opportunities. So when they're talking about pain points, scorecarding can be a good solution when there's that friction with employees about keeping everybody going in the same direction. So at the end, the biggest thing is simply listening to identify those opportunities as they come up. Now, that's the top of the sales funnel. The bottom of the sales funnel, accountants are really bad at self-promotion. I don't know. I think accountants sometimes can have this holier than thou, like, oh no, we're not going to do this sort of thing. But in reality, all it does is it hurts you. So if you're doing scorecarding with clients and getting great results, measure those results, get a quote from them, do a testimonial, and then share it. Share that really cool thing that you're doing so that it will get the attention of other clients, other people exploring your website. I know that's painful for most accounts. Client onboarding, and then we'll hop into Airtable and see what this actually looks like. If it's me and I'm rolling out this service, I'm thinking, okay, who am I going to put in charge of this besides myself? What's the team of 2 or 3 people that are going to oversee this, so that I'm not the one that ends up being inundated doing all these onboarding calls? And I don't want to be the guy that gets that, alert in the middle of the night, says something broke. So how do you set up from kind of client onboarding to ongoing support? How do you set that up in your team? The way I'm looking at rolling something like this out, you've got a standardized sign-up form with a kickstart fee. So from some sort of checkout on your website, and make it as easy as possible. If they can do it themselves via Stripe or something like that, that's the best way to do it. Try to avoid inserting yourself into the checkout process and having to send them a proposal or something like that. But you could, soup to nuts, have a sign up button on the website where they pay via Stripe, something like that. They get that kind of sign up form, or that could even be integrated into the site. And then they're immediately sent the configuration form for actually starting to run scorecards. So from checking out to the website to actually generating scorecards could be less than 5 minutes. So the more you can extract yourself from the process, the better. Flip side of that is maybe having a value conversation with them about what's the goal here, and you doing that configuration for them may be time well spent. Because if they're not thinking about the right way to set this up and to leverage it, then maybe it falls on its face before you even really get started. That's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a couple members of my team that do the onboarding for this and talk about what are we trying to get to, and then we're going to actually configure it in-house before they get access to it. And then bill usage on a monthly basis. So you got to have some sort of minimum cost of entry here, I think, for it to be worthwhile, whether that's $100, whether that's $500. I think you need some sort of minimum threshold for them to get in the door. And maybe that buys the first X number of scorecard generations. And then there's a per report fee on top of that. You don't want them coming in. You don't want to say $1 a scorecard or something like that. And then you come in and have somebody that runs it once a month or something. The big value opportunity here is high volume scorecarding. So you could run these once a month. I'm not sure how valuable that is, but the biggest opportunity is high volume scorecarding, because this is totally automated. And the more touch points there are that you're not having to manage, the greater the value is to the client. And monthly scorecards are not novel. That's not something new. What's novel here is the ability to generate a high volume of them in an automated way. So look for those high volume opportunities And that's where you're going to get the most value. So to Airtable, what are we selling? We're selling access to this form. That's it. Basically, you give them access to this. They can set up different configurations, or you could. You're going to put the configuration, the date, the recipient, and then the 3 results. So these are the 3 numbers shown here. This is the large number in the center of the card, smaller number at the bottom left, smaller number at the bottom right. They're going to submit this. Now, they don't have access to Airtable. So we're inside of Airtable right now. They don't have access to this. All they have access to is the public-facing forms. They just created this record. It called a webhook automatically. Banner Bear generated the image, and then it loaded the image of the scorecard back into Airtable automatically. In terms of what the client actually interfaces with, they're never going to be inside of Airtable like you are right here. They're only interfacing with the public-facing forms. Now, the benefit to this is we've got a scorecard generation template base here, and you can basically duplicate this base as many times as you want for each of those client situations. So I'll walk you through how this base is set up, what you're going to give your client access to, and how you can tailor it to each different client situation. So we've got 5 tables here inside the base. We've got simply a cards base. So this is each of the cards that are generated. Recipients. So usually when you're using this, you're going to have X number of people that get this every day or every week or something like that. And you don't want them to have to reach out to you every single time they have a new recipient or want to change the email address it goes to or something like that. So you're going to give them a public-facing form to add the recipient and their preferred delivery method. So I'm going to say John Smith, and this is the client that would be doing this, preferred delivery method, and I'm going to put this in here. So the client's able to do this themselves, add any number of recipients. You're also going to give them the ability to remove recipients. So there's a form for this as well. Let's say that we wanted to remove John Smith that we just created, hit remove. Now when we go back to the generate a scorecard form, John Smith shouldn't show up in the recipient options. So he's gone now. Now what just happened? We've got a table here that's simply for recipients that we want to be removed. Now anytime a record is added to this table, there's a built-in Airtable automation that runs called remove recipient. When a record is created in the remove recipient table, it goes over to the recipients table. So this one, it finds the ID of that recipient. So basically finds that record in the recipient table, and then it marks it archived. So each of these has this is filtered by when archived is unchecked, but every recipient that's ever added here is listed, and then there's just a checkbox anytime they're archived. And when somebody's archived, they don't show up in the list of possible recipients. So it's as simple as that. You've given your client the ability to themselves add and remove any number of recipients. They've got forms for each. So you don't need to manage that for them. Generally, there's going to be some sort of admin on their end that's managing this stuff, and they can change this stuff whenever they want to. It doesn't require any input from you. Now, the other thing I'll show you is a similar thing with configurations. So if you remember in the scorecard generation screen, the first step was configuration. And what this table does is it defines what shows up for these labels. And then it also defines the thresholds at which the stars are scored. So this could be client facing, or it could even just simply be managed internally by your team, because maybe you don't want to give the client the ability to set up any number of configurations themselves. Maybe you want to keep that in-house. So let's say this was going to be client facing. Here's what this would look like. So this is a public Airtable form. Again, they don't need any access to the Airtable base. It says, welcome to scorecard reporting. Create a configuration for your scorecards via these 3 steps. First, determine your 3 data labels. Second, indicate whether a high or low result is best. And then third, indicate the thresholds for star ratings. So header 1, let's say this guy has a taco truck and he's measuring how well his employees are doing when they're managing the taco truck. So header 1 is going to be tacos. Header 2 is going to be customers. And then header 3 is going to be, I don't know, spoilage. Is a good result a high number or a low number? So the star is based on, I guess this is important. The star rating is based on this key metric right here. So we're talking about the number of tacos sold. We're going to say a high number is a better result. Now, 5-star. If a high number is best, the recipient will receive 5 stars if the result is this amount or greater. Let's say if somebody has a killer day, they sold 100 tacos, that's going to give them 5 stars. Down from there, we're going to say 90, 80, 70, 60. Anything below that, they're getting 0 stars. So I'm going to submit this configuration. Now, when we go back to generate a scorecard, you'll see we've got this new taco configuration here as an option. So tacos, customer, spoilage, those are the 3 headers. Let's say Joyce worked the taco stand yesterday. Whoa. Or last Saturday. She sold 75 tacos. What was the second one? Customers. Maybe she saw 85 customers, a few slipped away, and then had 20 tacos of spoilage. I don't know what the unit of measurement would be there. So we're going to submit that. We'll hop back into our base here. So you'll see the new record is shown here. It's got the taco configuration for Joyce, all the figures that we just entered, and then Zapier triggered Bannerbear to create this image and then add it back into Airtable. Tacos, customer, spoilage. 2 stars. You're better than that, Joyce. So this is adding scorecards to an Airtable base. That's not very helpful, is it? This is part of it that I couldn't really standardize, but would be very easy to build out yourself, because whenever you add a recipient, you indicate, is their delivery method email, SMS, or Slack? So in this case, when the scorecard is generated, if it's in Zapier, if it's in Integromat or something like that, you're going to just have 3 branches of logic. One says, so Joyce was the one that just had that scorecard. You're going to say, if her preferred delivery method is email, it's going to go down this path, grab whatever's in the email field and send that scorecard to that email. If it's SMS, it's going to look at her phone number, send that image via SMS. If it's Slack, it's going to look at the Slack channel ID and then send that image via Slack. Basically, inside of Zapier, inside of Integromat, you have 3 nodes. And based on the data that's in Airtable, it's going to send it here, it's going to send it there, it's going to send it there. Now that can work for 1 employee, 2 employees like we have here, could work for 100 employees. And it's all going to go through that same Zapier logic. So I'll go a little bit deeper into the generation and all that stuff. I don't want to get too into the weeds on this though, just to, pique curiosity, because it is cool how it comes together. Now, when a card is submitted, it calls a webhook. And that webhook is a Zapier process. So we've talked a bit about webhooks. This is literally all they are. It's a trigger inside of Zapier. So when you're setting up a trigger in a Zap, one of the options is a webhook. And it gives you a unique URL for that webhook. So this is a hook that they just created for you, and you can throw anything you want at that webhook. And so on the Airtable side, when a record is submitted, it calls that webhook, and then it gives all the data for the scorecard that's then going to go to Bannerbear. So that's really all there is to webhooks. And webhooks actually work the same way that those pre-filled forms did for Airtable. So when we talked about pre-filled forms, if you have an Airtable form and you wanted one of those fields to be pre-filled when it loaded the form, you had your URL, and what you would put at the end was like question mark prefill underscore, the ID, and then what you want it to be pre-filled with. So we've done that a couple of times. Calling webhooks is the same thing. So it actually uses what are called URL parameters, which might sound scary. It's basically just you call this URL, you put a question mark at the end, and then you say whatever you want the name of the variable to be equals the value of the variable. So for example, in the case of the scorecard, when Airtable calls this webhook, it's gonna, one of the things it's gonna include is the name. And so it's gonna call this webhook, say question mark, name equals Joyce Byers, whatever the name is. Now, if you wanna add a number of things to that URL, a number of parameters, you just put an ampersand between each one. So it gives it the name, it gives it heading 1, it gives it result 1, heading 2, result 2, that sort of thing. So that's all that's happening here. You call this webhook and it starts this zap. Next thing it does is it calls Banner Bear and says, here are all the variables from the previous step to generate the image. And so if you missed the Banner Bear week, it's pretty straightforward. So here's the template inside of Banner Bear. Let's hop in and say edit template. And what is set up here is basically a fancy looking background with a few text boxes on top of it. Result 3, this is just a text box. And one of the things that we pass to Banner Bear when we generate this image is what text do we want to go in text box result 3. That's really all this does. Is Zapier is going to call each of the variables in this card, and then Banner Bear will give back the generated image. So if we go back to the Zap that generates this, the first thing it asks for is what template do you want to work with? And that was the demo template. Next is month. So let's find month inside of Banner Bear. Here is month. It's this first little number up here. This is supposed to be month and then day. So month should be 2 numbers. Banner Bear will let it give you the month text, whether you want the text to auto fit size-wise, the color of it, and the background of that little box. All I want to mess with is the month. So I pass in the month from the card submission form. Next is day. That was the number right beneath it. Next was title, which is actually the name, etc. So these are all the variables inside of the Banner Bear template. All we're doing is handing that stuff off to Banner Bear to generate the images. Now, one thing with Banner Bear is your Zapier won't sit here and wait until the image is done being generated because it can take up to 45 seconds. And so with Banner Bear, what you actually have is anytime you have a separate Zap to handle any image that's been generated. So here's the secondary Zap, and the trigger is there's a new image that's been generated in Banner Bear. And then the action is we update the record inside of Airtable. So when that image is done, comes back over here and it adds that image to Airtable. Now, this is where if you are actually delivering it to the eventual destination, in the case of Zapier, they call them paths. You basically say, you set up a filter so that if this condition is met, it goes down this path. If this condition is met, it goes down this path, etc. In the case of what we would do here, we would actually look up that card record in Airtable, and then that's going to tell us, do they want to get it via email? Do they want to get it via SMS, etc.? Then you're going to add paths down here, and then a path for if they want it via SMS, you're going to send it via SMS this way. And Zapier actually has a built-in SMS thing, so you can just use that. If they want to send it via email, you're going to send them an email this way. And so then you define what email are you sending it out of? Is it like your own email? Is it a scorecarding at your domain kind of special email address, that sort of thing? And then lastly, if they indicated Slack or Microsoft Teams or something like that, in Slack, every channel has a unique ID. And so they put the ID in there and then it posts the image to Slack. So that's nuts and bolts of what is happening here. How to think about the best way to introduce it. I think what I'd probably do here, I'd have a landing page on my website, because before I get started on this, I want somebody to pay the Kickstart fee and then get set up on a subscription. And I probably wouldn't use a full-blown proposal builder for this because I want them to just be able to go through the entire process themselves. I don't want to, for every single person, have to interject myself into the checkout process. I may have a sales conversation with them beforehand and say, here's a great use case, maybe even run a couple examples for their use case, send it to them. But at the end of the day, I'm going to send them to that landing page to check out. Now, once they've checked out, it's going to push out some sort of task to my project management system where the onboarding team is then going to get them set up with their own configuration. So in my case, the way I actually use this is my team would access this configuration form. They would set up the configuration based on what the client wants. Maybe they help them load in kind of the initial people, and then they're going to turn over that submission form to the client. Now, the way that I've approached this is the client always submits the data to generate the scorecards. So you've got some sort of admin on their team that's running a report at the end of each day, end of each week, something like that. And they're going to key in the amounts that are going to generate the scorecards. Now, we touched on this briefly before. If you have a high volume situation, you could build in a CSV upload alternative via flat file. So flat file is super cool. We've all done this before where we do these kind of mass CSV imports into QBO or something like that. What flat file does is it allows you to define the format of what that upload should be. So in the case of our scorecards, there's, what is it? Is it 5 things that they actually are going to submit each time? Now we have a scorecard. So our CSV would be date, name, result 1, result 2, result 3. So the format of the CSV file would just have those 5 headers, and then they could submit that way. Or if they have a system that has all this data already, and they can export a CSV out of that system with the click of the button, you could also create a flat file format that matches whatever it is that comes out of their system. And then you just pull the 5 columns that you care about. So high volume situation. Let's say they have 200 employees and you want a scorecard going to those 200 employees every day. Theoretically, what you could do, an admin could run this CSV report. They upload that CSV report that ought to have 200 records, 1 for each employee. And then flat file works with Zapier. You could pull out the 5 columns that you care about, and that's how you generate your scorecards. So you've got an option like this, and this, you don't need to write code or anything with this. You visually design how that stuff comes together. For smaller volume use cases, this will be just fine. But for higher volume use cases, you could pretty easily build something that would handle imports as well. And that's assuming that their tool doesn't have native like API integrations. So if it's like an API enabled tool, you'd simply wire that thing up for them. If it wasn't a platform that had a good API, you could do that for them. But man, if you got any of those clients, I'd love to meet them because I don't have those clients right now. So that's it in a nutshell, I think. In order for you to mirror exactly what I've got here, I'll publicly share this Airtable base so you can make a copy of it. You can get the whole thing. You can dig into it more if you want. You can tailor it a little more with your own branding, messaging, that sort of thing. You basically need 3 components, I think. You need the Airtable base, you need the Banner Bear template, and you need the Zaps. Zaps can be shared. So we can also share these Zaps, make them public. If there's one thing that's hard to share, probably it's Banner Bear. Ooh, but now that I say that, I think they may have released the ability to share templates the other day as well. So we might actually be able to share, make public. So you've got 3 components to make this work. Airtable, Zapier, and Banner Bear. All of these things can be shared. You can grab all these things yourself. Only thing you have to do is basically change the webhook to be your actual Zapier webhook, that sort of thing. So most of this stuff you could pull off the shelf and get started. If there's one thing to be thinking about, it's the bigger picture. How do I sell this? What are the opportunities I need to be listening for that are good opportunities for scorecarding? Because how you build it, I think in the grand scheme of things, isn't that hard. And we'll have some more content going deeper on these tools so that you should feel comfortable rolling something like that yourself. In worst case, you've got a community of people to help. I think that's it. I've left some extra time to dig into what's coming next. So where are we? Congratulations. You have all graduated from the 8-week tech workshop series. So what's the goal of this? Because I know it's a lot. It's a lot of new tech. 8 one-hour sessions is not enough to make you a pro at Airtable, a pro at Zapier, or RPA, stuff like that. The idea is get your head around these different types of tech, because these types of tech are what's dictating where everything is going, where our industry is going. It's the tech that the SaaS products are built on top of.
Pretty neat, right? You can see how that comes together into something that your clients could get pumped about. At the end of the day, how can you frame those data points you already have into something that your clients will happily pay for? There's probably a bunch of ways we can do that. This was the last of an 8-week series I did live with my accountant community. If you thought this was rad, how would you like to geek out with a whole bunch of other people that think this is rad? That's why I started the community. I wanted to find a bunch of nerds that got excited about this stuff like me. You can learn more about that community in the video description. That is the last of this continuing education eligible series, but I got more of that stuff on the way. Easiest way to stay in the loop, sign up for my weekly tech newsletter at subscribe.jason.cpa, and I'll see you in the next one.